An hour ago, her husband left her. For a whole hour, Ludmila has been sitting in the same pose on the sofa, blankly staring at the floor in front of her. But where to run? What to do? For whom? Meaning has disappeared from her life. The day before yesterday, they celebrated their silver wedding anniversary. Guests congratulated them, wished them happiness, shouted bitter, a tradition where the newlyweds must kiss, and she was as happy as a girl. At 18, she fell in love with her Alex and was always satisfied with life, but now she can't imagine living without him. God didn't bless them with children, so she directed all her care towards her beloved husband. Every evening, she rushed from work to stop by the store and please him with something tasty. In their village, Ludmila and Alex were considered a beautiful couple. At the celebration, they matched each other perfectly, both above average height, having grown fuller over time. Alex in a new gray suit with waves of graying hair. She wore a custom-made cream dress, a beautiful hairstyle. Friends loved to visit their hospitable, cozy home. She put delicious salads, fluffy pies, appetizing crispy tomatoes, and cucumbers on the festive table. And everything was made and grown by her hands. She did it effortlessly, quickly, skillfully, with a smile. At the anniversary celebration, the toasts declared them the happiest couple in our village. So much for happiness. How shameful. Everyone around knew he was unfaithful. She was blindly happy and noticed nothing. She loved and trusted. But no one uttered a word to her. Not friends, not colleagues, not relatives. Traitors and liars. They watched from the sidelines to see what would happen between them next. The wedding was a real show. Every toast was a lie. And Alex, the pillar of her life, her happiness, the main liar and betrayer. He pretended to be in love and made her a laughingstock. She was truly happy. Sighing, Ludmila rubbed her stiff neck. The door in the hallway slammed. For a moment, it seemed like nothing had happened, and Alex had come back. She sprang up, hoping he had reconsidered and returned. But she met the eyes of the village's main gossip. Aunt Daria. Could you give me some salt, please? While her eyes scanned everything around. She was curious about how Mrs. Ludmila was now feeling. Ludmila spread her hands. I've run out myself, was just about to head to the store. She wished Daria would leave sooner. She had to walk her to the gate and lock it behind her. She leaned back against the high, sturdy fence. It begins. Now their divorce will be the main news. Everyone will look at her as if she were a leper. Just like Martin Anna, who has been divorced for 10 years, but is still called Anna the Abandoned. She muttered, no, this can't be happening to me. Or maybe it's all just a dream. Alex, how could you do such a vile thing to me? Let me down like this? It's too late to start over at 43. And there's no one to live with. Sliding down the fence, she sat on the ground. Her head spun. The white light in her eyes dimmed. But the grass was soft, silky. The earth had warmed up during the day, hot. The sun was setting. And she needed to sleep. Morning is wiser than the evening. She went to the bedroom, spread the huge bed, and fell to her knees in front of it. Tears flowed like a river. How many happy nights this bed had known. And now she was alone, alone, alone. She cried out loud until she fell asleep. There was no one to listen anyway. She woke up on the carpet next to the bed in the morning. She got up, still in her nightgown, went out to the porch without washing her face. And sat down on the steps. And what to do next? How to live? Good thing she was on vacation. No need to go to work under curious glances. She started sobbing again. Oh, Alex, Alex, you won't be happy. Trouble has come. It's time to go into the house, get myself together. The thought of food made her feel sick and nauseous. But what is there to do? No need to cook food. No one to feed. The house is clean. No one to make it dirty. She went out to the garden. Everything was in order. She had weeded the beds just 2 days ago. All the plants were tied up, the paths well maintained. Live and in joy. But there was no joy. She remembered. 2 years ago, she started embroidering a towel. Now she had time. She went out into the yard, sat down with her needlework under the lacy shadow of an apple tree, and thought. She would sit here until death, on the bench Alex had made for her. But there were no more tears. A month passed. All this time, Ludmila didn't leave the house. She didn't want to see anyone. A firm decision matured in her head. She didn't want to live and saw no reason to. She couldn't bring herself to end her life through bloody suicide. It was a grave sin. And the thought of how this event would be discussed was revolting to her. She simply stopped eating. At first, she didn't want to, but then she decided. She would live as long as God allowed. Gradually, the feeling of hunger dulled and ceased. She drank only water. She mechanically did housework and lay in the sun like a city dweller. Incredible weakness and absolute indifference to everything in the world reigned in her soul. She lost a lot of weight. Once, this had been her dream, but now it brought her no joy. She enjoyed the semi-forgetfulness and peace she was in. Not a drop of worry about the past, present, or future. Neighbors and friends tried to visit. They knocked on the gates, always locked. Ludmila didn't want to speak to anyone and replied that she was busy. However, she learned to contemplate the world around her for hours, in the yard and in the garden. The world turned out to be multifaceted and interesting. She especially liked to watch the plants. Chaste creations of God. They devoured no one. Quietly and peacefully swayed from the touch of a breeze. And offered their leaf hands to the sun. They turned towards it. As soon as it began to set, they closed as well, until its first morning rays. Her daily routine was much the same. In the evening, she went to sleep early, as the sunlight disappeared. Slept peacefully all night. And at dawn, greeted the sunrise. She wore a swimsuit, exposing her body to the warmth of the sun. Laid directly on the dewy gray grass. And so she lay, basking in the sun all day. Her strength left her gradually. And with it, bad, anxious thoughts left. Ludmila forgot about her husband. His infidelity. And there was no acute pain from the irreparable loss. She no longer cared about the opinions of friends and villagers. And it didn't matter what they thought and said about her. She closed her eyes and lay down, facing the sunlight. Hiding in the most scorching sun under the lace-like foliage of trees. The plants were with her all day. They didn't bother, didn't intrude into her soul, didn't pester with silly conversations. They simply coexisted nearby, causing no distress. Her vacation was ending. A month had flown by. And she was still alive and moving. Perhaps the sun gave her strength. After all, daisies, maples, cucumbers, and weeds live. Especially the weeds. Ludmila marveled at their vitality, resilience, ability to reproduce, and adapt to changing conditions. Even on the well-tended plot, new squads of young weeds consistently raised their heads. This morning, rising at dawn, she washed and walked through the dewy grass to the garden. But she wanted to lie down on the ground and just lie there. And so she did. She dropped the hoe and lay on the grass. Her head stopped spinning. A tranquil peace entered her soul. Her body, unusually thin and dark golden from tanning, rested. The sun rose, the dew on the grass dried, and Ludmila felt the warmth of the rays caressing her skin. It seemed strength flowed through her skin, accumulated in her muscles. And she could live again. After lying down, she got up, took the hoe, and went to the garden. What vast reserves the body has. For a long period, she lived and even engaged in hard labor. True, she now did this work just so, out of necessity, more out of habit. But she liked the movement. In motion, the sun warmed, bathed her tanned body. How many kilograms had she lost during this time? 10, 20, or more. Suddenly, she felt her lightness, almost weightlessness. Interestingly, today she liked everything. The light body and the caress of the sun's warmth. Why is that? Finally, there was no feeling of hopelessness and loss that had haunted her for the last month. As if there was no betrayal by her beloved Alex, without whom she could not live. And who said that without him, she couldn't live? She lives and enjoys the sun and the beauty of the world. Ludmila stopped, looking around as if seeing the green grove behind the garden, the blue river in the distance, and the bottomless blue sky overhead for the first time. And what does this beautiful world, which belongs only to her, have to do with the foolish behavior of some man? But he was drawn to something sweet with a young woman. Probably thinks that he will look younger next to her, not understanding that against her background, he looks even older. She imagined Alex, a solid, plump, graying man, next to thin Elena, whom he left for, and was surprised. For the first time, this thought did not scorch her heart with acute pain. He left, so be it, it didn't matter to her. After weeding the last row, she entered the cool house and looked around with pleasure. This was her world, not dependent on the whims of someone else. Approaching the mirror, she saw a slender, attractive woman. With the extra kilograms, the bags under her eyes and puffiness had gone. Her hair had grown, her eyes opened and sparkled. Her skin on the face and body was young and radiantly clear. And her figure, without an ounce of excess fat or a single crease, was sculpted. Ludmila couldn't believe her eyes. And the longer she looked in the mirror, the more she liked her reflection. Living in the world was so wonderful, especially being beautiful and light. She wanted to walk, even run, feeling a huge surge of energy and overwhelming joy. And she absolutely did not want to eat. Her body was full of strength and happiness. Except maybe for a young bumpy cucumber from the garden. An astonishing turning point day. A day of transformation. Both internal and external. Her soul was filled with peace, bliss, and a sense of unity with nature. When every bush and flower seemed painfully familiar, dear, and close. The biggest surprise came in the evening. At sunset, having bid farewell to the setting sun, she lay down to sleep, although she was full of energy and strength. The joy of life did not leave her soul for a second. But there was something wrong with her body. The sensations filling it were absolutely unfamiliar. Suddenly, Ludmila felt a distinct kick in her stomach. Again and again. She was a bit scared and quieted down in confusion, listening to her body. The movement repeated, and a delightful thought occurred to her. Was she going to have a baby? Indeed, before the celebration of the silver anniversary, she suspected she was pregnant. There were all the signs, but she didn't tell Alex, not to disappoint him in case her guess was wrong. When he left the next day, it made no sense to speak of it and further humiliate herself before him. Then she decided to leave this world. Nothing interested her. But wise nature, to save a new innocent life, opened new reserves. Ludmila stroked the little being in her body. It calmed down and quieted gratefully. Tomorrow, she would see a doctor. There was the meaning of her life. There was joy and happiness. In the morning, Ludmila put on a stylish sundress, emphasizing her waist with a beautiful belt, and satisfied with her appearance, went outside. She walked through the village, slender, rejuvenated, with a springy light step, a happy smile, and sparkling eyes. Curious villagers watched her and made hundreds of assumptions. Why had the recluse suddenly become so happy? But their opinions and curiosity didn't interest her. In half an hour, she left the clinic fully confident that she was expecting a long-awaited daughter, who was kicking her wayward but so happy mom with both little legs. And within an hour, all the villagers knew that 43-year-old Mrs. Ludmila would soon be a mom. And they wondered, what would Mr. Alex do now? Stay with Elena or return to Mrs. Ludmila? The only person who wasn't concerned with this question was Ludmila. She spent days mentally and aloud communicating with her tiny, unborn daughter. She sang songs to her, told her bedtime stories, consulted on how best to arrange their home. The world around blossomed with new colors. Everything in life had meaning, and every new day was a reason for joy. When the long-awaited daughter arrived in due time, Ludmila was immensely happy. She unwrapped the tiny body and carefully examined the child. The girl was born of average weight, not big, not small. Hands, legs, fingers, and everything else were normal. The gaze was meaningful, reacting normally to external stimuli. The doctors also found no abnormalities upon examination. She was discharged on the 5th day. Friends and colleagues gathered at the maternity hospital with flowers and champagne to congratulate her. The women immediately noted among themselves how wonderfully their peer, becoming a mom for the first time when they already had grandchildren, looked. She was taken home, showered with gifts for the newborn, offered help which Ludmila declined, offending everyone. She needed no one but little Elena. One evening, Alex knocked on the door. Ludmila calmly accepted the flowers and listened as he, eyes downcast, tried to explain himself, stumbling and starting over. She looked at this older, plump man and tried to imagine that this was her beloved. But Elena needed a father. When Alex guiltily asked if he could return, she affirmatively answered and almost forgave him when he, holding their daughter in his arms, lulled her by singing a lullaby. A lullaby. A lullaby.